Hi, everybody. This is Steve Olson and Wayne Steiger with the Steiger-Olson Report, part of the Galactic News Network. How are you this morning, Wayne Steiger?
Steve, I'm doing great. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing wonderful. Man, I'll tell you, over the weekend, we did that interview with Dr. T, PhD psychologist, rather,
Yeah.
and I honestly felt like I got helped. You know
Well,
what I mean? Like I
I
had
don't
a
know.
session with him. You know what I
I
mean?
almost feel guilty, like we should have wrote him a check because, you know,
You still might. I don't know. Depends on.
and Dr. T, hey, listen, you're welcome back here. I'd love, as Steve and I've talked to you, let's come back. People are being helped, Steve.
Right. And we've got this, so we wanted to extend it a little bit, and we had some layman's understandings that Wayne has gone through and put a couple slides together. And Wayne, why don't we walk through cognitive dissonance layman's version?
Yeah, because, I never realized that I suffered from it at a time. We all do. And in fact, I found that this very telling because it is and does have a dramatic effect upon people. Because what we're seeing today, Steve, it's exactly this. You're meeting yourself coming and going.
I know, and this is what the world is telling us every time we turn around.
Yeah, and the individuals that come and just write the hateful and words, and we now know that they are the ones suffering. And
And our family members and people like, so that's what really was rang true to me. It's like anybody who's ever tried to tell a family member about this or share this with a close friend or relative or whatever, sometimes you not only do you get like, I don't disagree with you, Steve, and let's just agree not to disagree. On so many things I can be that way with my family and friends, but when it comes to this particular subject or subjects of this magnitude, now I understand why people can even be violent. They can be angry and violent and very rude in an unusual, it just does, it will be out of character for them. And now I know why.
And now we know why. I've had a number of emails sent to me, and it's touching people. There are a lot of hurting people. There are families, there's marriages, there are relationships that have been impacted because of not just the subject of Planet X or Nibiru, but it's about everything, Steve. It's about the political shift, the upheaval that we're seeing played out on the news and the streets. It affects us in more ways than we know, right?
Many more ways. And it actually causes deep emotional trauma. And it also causes, like Dr. T, if you were, if our audience caught this, I know you caught it, but it's like it can create outlets of action that are not consistent with belief. And that's the thing that smucked me right in the face.
Well, you know what this also brought? I stayed up Saturday night after our interview with Dr. T, and I went back, and as I was taking the notes, and the impact that I got too is that each of us live in our own separate reality. And it goes into that theory that multiple realities can coexist in a single plane. Does that make sense?
If two humans can exist in a room together, that's an example of two realities in a single plane.
Precisely. And we have talked about this before, and we'll talk about it more because I think not only is this when you begin to recognize what's taking place, but I believe that this is a road to healing, Steve. And if there's one thing that the Steiger-Olson report can do, if we can bring to our viewers the opportunity for healing, what is wrong with that?
I hope nothing, because that's what we're going to do.
So I think it's important, again, that for myself is to understand the shaping of core beliefs, Steve. I know that when you and I first started talking to each other, it's been quite a while back now, that there was this process that even both of us were going through. And as we saw this, we saw it amongst others. We just didn't know what to call it. I didn't.
I called it assholes.
Well, you see, therein lies the problem. Because, you know, it's human nature to want to protect yourself, right?
I was having cognitive dissonance about my audience's cognitive dissonance.
Yes.
And I'm not even trying to joke. It just sounds funny. It's true. I was like, I didn't want to think that humans could be so close-minded. But it's like, no, Steve, when you come against somebody, not come against, but when the data and science that you present goes directly against a person's core belief, you can expect that as they're trying to reconcile their belief structure and reality, that there's going to be some, troubled waters.
Yeah, and what I found that it allowed me to be able to help keep my emotions in check. Now, when I start thinking about what I call the slow gassing of us by the chemtrails, there I let my anger flow like the mighty ocean goes. But I've now understood something, Steve, that we are not here to really, I think, separate people, but try to join people.
Yeah, can you go back to the diagram real quick, and we'll maybe close on that
Sure.
for this segment. But I want to just walk through this, okay?
Yeah.
So in this cognitive, this is the therapy model, and we didn't get quite into the therapy model with Dr. T. Maybe we can talk about it. But once you've identified either the belief and the reality or action, or sometimes it has to do with the way you act versus what you believe. And we see this with a lot of religious people, moralism. Moralism will cause actions that belie or deny the belief. That's why what moralism is, like when you say the way to be accepted by the universe or the way to be accepted by God is a behavior, and then you do a behavior that's opposite of that, you'll also cause cognitive dissonance. And dissonance is an unpleasant place to be for a human, isn't it, Wayne?
Well, I did not realize, but as Dr. T showed, it actually can cause physical pain.
Right. It actually is one of the really high states of emotional stresses a person can be, is when they're existing in a cognitive dissonance pattern. Okay. So once the dissonance has been identified, and for just, well,
can we go back for a second on the belief structure on that?
Sure.
Because
core belief, though, you have to remember, these are core beliefs, not like,
yes,
I believe
yes.
this tastes better than that. We're talking about you, first thing out of the womb of your mother, the first belief that you ever had belief.
Yeah, and I never realized that now they're saying that it's actually being monitored in the womb. But, I can't help but not think about Morpheus' classic saying in The Matrix: we never wake a person up past a certain age because they can't handle it. And
how profound, right? But here's the thing. It seems like most of our audience, when you look at the demographics of the people that listen to all of the collection of shows that we do, they tend to be over 50 years old. Wayne, explain that.
Well, I can, and because that is the generation. Back in the 1970, there was a group called the Fifth Dimension, and they had the song Aquarius. And I remembered, Steve, as I sit here and reflect on this, that it was a movement. We didn't recognize it as actually a spiritual movement because it was immediately classified by the elite, by the church, as a spiritualist thing, and because it was coming from the counterculture, which we were called hippies, it was disregarded. But great minds came out of that. Alan Watt, many great.
Yeah, and listen, I know this is gonna piss a lot of people off, but Timothy Leary and Dennis and his brother McKenna's and the Psychonauts and then the people that, you know, explored consciousness, like Alan Watts.
So my point is to all this, Steve, they planted the seed in us.
They sure did, didn't they?
Didn't they?
But
And
they always, so what happened was they actually intentionally created a dissonance in us.
yes, yes. And because we were all raised, well, the most part, you know, now in my earlier formative, you know, my mother baptized me as a baby, you know, into the Catholic faith. But my point is that when that core belief was being attached, right? And as we began to grow up, for myself, I know I was right in the middle of all that. I was on my own at the age of 15, and I was hanging around adults. And so here we are now, as you said, why is it over 50? Because I think now we're going back and realizing that this is not so foreign to us. It's not so, how should we say, unexpected. What we are having a problem with is how do we put it into our day-to-day living today?
Well,
Right?
again, it's amazing how we come back to this concept of frequency. And I say this as a born and bred Christian from the day I was born, and how actually consistent. There's nothing biblical that is against the idea of resonance and dissonance. And that rang my bell so hard. And I don't want people to be running away from it because it's modern psychiatry, okay? But what they actually call the disorder is dissonance. That's
Yes.
a term about, that's a specifically about frequency, to describe frequency, okay? And they use it is because it's so descriptive of the disorder, okay? Because when you feel dissonant, you feel out of sorts, you feel out of sync, you feel, I mean, there's all these frequency discussion points about it, or words. So
Well,
the
I
real
think that,
word should be increased resonance on the other side of this.
yes, yes, yes. That,
And so what we're encouraging people to do is take a long think about this, is that, are you going to have to change your belief? Are you going to have to change what actions you're taking in your life that are inconsistent with your beliefs? Or are you going to have to change the action and perception, which are what we're talking about today mostly, to get to a resonance? Yeah, I don't know.
well, I do. I think that, Steve, we're spot on this because, listen, the point to this chart is this. You want to be in the 3-stage action points. It's changing beliefs, which are very difficult.
The hardest thing to do, according to Dr. T.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, I know it for myself. And then the change that would require action. Now, this is what trips up most people. I think a lot of people start on the road and say, hey, okay, I can weigh my beliefs and I can begin to accept, sometimes in small steps, that my belief system may not be right. But it's getting tripped up in that action piece, because I think that that's where the confusion comes in. What action do you take? Where do you go? Who do you trust? What can you believe? And if you can get past that stage 2 and then get to the change action perception, well, you're well on your way after that.
Well, and again, I think that I'll give a personal example to this, and we'll let it go. I know we've gone long in this segment, but I think it was worthy of the discussion.
It's a good segment.
But I'll give you an example for me that's not Nibiru related, okay? It's more personal growth related, okay? And that is, in my life, I had a belief structure that I was a strong person, that I was a smart person, that I was a productive member of society, and all those things. Yet I felt a deep sense of dissonance in my life. And the question had to be, well, why did I feel what action or what inconsistency was happening in me that was causing me to have that dissonance? Well, in my personal experience, it was the idea that I was deceived in thinking I was a sovereign when I was not sovereign at all.
Yeah.
It's a deep one.
Yeah.
And I'm still working through it. So I'm not saying I'm perfect in it, but it's a huge cause of dissonance. And so when you start to look around in your life on an idea like sovereignty and how important that is to the human experience in order to fully experience your destiny, you have to understand that you're a free will, sovereign being in this universe. You are seeing reality through this incarnation of the human body, of the human form, and you are experiencing this as an individual. You are given a sovereignty. I believe that there is a sovereignty given to us by the Creator himself.
I agree with you. And I just thought for our audience, when I hear the word dissonance, what I also hear and interpret is the word disconnect. And
so when I started to connect with my my sovereignty, which is you make decisions to not be abused. You
yes.
can make a decision not to be handled in a certain way. You can decide not to go down a road that you don't want to go down. You have your own free will in matters of importance. Okay, that sovereignty will give you back your life again. I mean,
Yes.
and that was the example I put into this model. So what did I do? I changed my belief about sovereignty. And instead of it being just something I thought I was, I really made it real. And that caused more resonance for me. I feel like a more whole human being now.
More connected, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's it. More connected.
Yep.
Well, I think this is a good place to end this segment. Steve, I think that our personal responsibility, as Dr. T told us, is to kind of just give a summary. And what would you sum this up that we'd like to see our audience take away as, really good action points?
Okay. I would say that if you feel a sense of, call it discord in your heart or confusion in your heart, and you're acting a certain way that just kind of just denies, who you think you are, like you're angry or unkind or any of those types of things, understand that it's a normal human reaction to when you're faced with something that maybe you have to change a belief or an action.
Yeah.
And it's the hard thing to do, but if you really want to get at the core of why you're being angry and why you can't understand why you're snapping or why you're being a certain way, just be open-minded to what Wayne and I are trying to put out there. Right, Wayne?
Yeah, and I'll just add one part to this, folks. I believe the hardest thing for us as a species, as living beings, is to be able to forgive ourselves. And I think that when you talk about dissonance, it has a guilt factor to it, Steve, because when you begin to change belief systems, perceptions, we've seen it in the emails. There can be separation. So I would just.
But on the good end of it, though, we have a good 5% of our emailing audience that are people that have come back and said, at first I was mad at you and I didn't even know why I was mad at you. It was just like I would watch your show. It would be reasonable data. You guys would be having a layman's discussion about very complicated scientific stuff. There's no reason for me to be mad at you, but I was mad at you. And I used to say to myself, being a Christian, I'd be like, oh, that's a demon. No, you know what? It was cognitive dissonance, and it was them trying to re-sync, and that's all it was, guys. So forgive yourself. Just like Wayne said, when you said that, it broke my heart, Wayne. It's true. The biggest damn thing that this control structure that we've been born into has over our head is guilt.
It is. Be kind to one another.